you guys, and welcome back to the Delightful Planning YouTube channel. My name is Sydney, and we are going to dive in today to you just got engaged. Congratulations. Now, what the heck are you supposed to do? So let's dive into some things that you should do when you're first engaged, but maybe before you are picking a venue. So number one, take a second and enjoy yourself. This can be such an exciting time, but also such an overwhelming time, and it goes by so fast. So please take a moment, go on a date with your fiance and soak it in, really soak in this decision that you have just made to, commit yourself to this person for the rest of your life, to actually get married, to join your lives. Sit for a minute, talk about it, enjoy yourself, just enjoy yourself, and don't let the wedding planning stress come in right away where it takes away from the moment. So once you've enjoyed yourself for a moment, I want you to think about what season you want your wedding to be in. Now, there's a few different parts to this. First of all, in your relationship, when do you want this wedding to be? Do you want it to be a year out, 2 years out? What kind of timeline are you thinking here? The second thing is literally the season of the year. Do you want it to be fall, spring, winter, summer? What do you have in mind? Now, I'm a firm believer that it's your day, your way. If you want to have fall colors in the spring or spring colors in the fall, go right ahead and do that. But if you do want to match kind of that vibe, that aesthetic of like a winter wonderland or a summer wedding, like a beachy summer, bright colors, then think about that. Do you view yourself serving apple cider, why am I struggling with this word? Apple cider. Yeah, apple cider. Or do you view yourself serving apple cider at your I just said at your vinegar. You guys. It's like 7 p.m. Okay. I've had a long day. Do you view yourself serving apple cider at your wedding or something more like mimosas? Mimosas are typically going to be a spring, summer wedding thing, and apple cider, hot cocoa might be more in the fall and the winter. No right or wrong. Just kind of think about what season you are planning to do. Now, I also, if you can, I like picking a season, not a date. Some people specifically say they want to get married on a certain date because it's their anniversary. And I get it. If you want to do it, go for it. But you are limiting yourself to a lot less venues. Maybe if you're planning for like 3 years out, you'll have that flexibility. But if you want to get married within the next year and a half, picking a specific date is going to automatically cross off a lot of the popular venues. And that's up to you if you're okay with that or not. When you're searching, you might fall in love with a venue, but if that date isn't available, then it's automatically off the list, where maybe like the following week would be available and you can have that venue that you love. Anyway, that's up to you. I just suggest kind of be flexible with the dates, pick a season, maybe not a specific date if you can avoid it. So I have some notes. The next thing, I don't like this one, but ballpark budget. You need to unfortunately talk about your budget before you even start shopping for a venue. If you go to a venue, you might fall in love with this venue and you're not going to have a clue if it's realistic or not if you haven't talked about your budget. Every venue is going to try probably at the end of your tour to kind of sit down and go over their packages. And you need to have your ballpark budget at least prepared before you go into these conversations, honestly, to avoid wasting a lot of time. It's really hard to fall in love with things and then realize that it's outside of your budget. And so I would really like for you to not even waste your time with some of those venues if you can't afford it, or at the very least, go into this conversation prepared so you have some answers, and that then you can talk to whoever's giving you the tour of the venue and kind of get a vibe of, hey, this is what we think our ballpark budget is. Are we in the same ballpark? You don't have to know your exact budget. That's okay. But figure out what ballpark you're in to see if that venue is in the same ballpark as well. A lot of venues have different options. Like a lot of venues will have like an indoor space, an outdoor space, a space for like a really big space or a really small space. And those are going to be different prices. So that's why I'm saying you can still search around and not know your budget 100%, but at least know what ballpark you're playing in. And then you can go into these conversations and figure out if that venue is in the same ballpark. With that said, the next thing on here is guest count, because it goes hand in hand. You need to know your guest count to know what type of space you need. I don't want you to fall in love with the venue that only holds 50 people when you have 200 people on your guest count. So figure out how many people are coming to the wedding. And then this goes back to what we were saying about the budget. Maybe a venue that you absolutely love, their main space for their weddings holds 250 people, but that is outside of your budget. They might have a smaller space for 50 people that's inside of your budget. So you need to have at least a rough estimate of your guest count before you go talk to these venues, because they're going to ask you, what's your budget? What's your guest count? How much money do you have? And how many people do we have to fit here? Because it really is going to make or break your decision on which venue is going to be the right fit for you. Now, with your guest count, I would just say, if you're on the fence about people, add them on in the beginning. Don't necessarily invite them, but in the very beginning, before you go venue shopping, total it all up of everybody you could possibly be inviting. I'd rather you say, okay, we might have 200 people, and then in reality, you only invite 150. Then you say, oh no, we're not going to invite them. And you try to choose like a smaller venue, or like you estimate your budget off of that small guest count. And then you end up adding and adding and adding. And now you're over the guest count for your venue. You're over your budget. And that's when you're going to run into problems. The next thing also in my program, the Your Day program, I walk you through all of these things in much more detail of how to figure out what the heck your ballpark budget is, how to figure out what your guest count is, or how to estimate what your guest count should be. So if you want a lot of help with this, check out the Your Day program or contact me and I can try to do one-on-one services with you. I do offer that as well, and I can help you figure this out. So the next thing is venue specifics. Before you just go aimlessly looking at all these venues, because there are so many venues, you're going to get really overwhelmed if you aimlessly just start looking at everything. So have a conversation with your fiance about venue specifics that you're looking for. Do you want an indoor ceremony? Do you want an outdoor ceremony? Do you want the ceremony, the cocktail hour, and the reception to all be at one location? Do you want it to be at separate locations? These are conversations that you should at least start having and thinking about before you go venue searching, because I promise you, if you just aimlessly go venue searching, you're going to see a million venues and they're all probably beautiful. And then your decision is going to be really, really hard to make, because you're going to say, oh, I love that venue, but I love this venue. And you're going to get confused. So try to narrow down your search. Do you want an indoor or an outdoor wedding? Do you want the mountains? Do you want the beach? Do you want the desert? These are things that you have to start talking about before you go searching for venues. So this kind of spills into once you're actually talking to venues, but I want you to keep a couple things in mind. Look at their required vendor list or preferred vendor list. A preferred vendor list is going to be, hey, we really want you to use these vendors, but you don't necessarily have to. A required vendor list is, hey, you have to pick from these, and that's it. Sometimes I'll make exceptions. Sometimes you can apply to have a different vendor come in, but take a look at that. Now, required vendor lists are not necessarily a bad thing. If anything, I'd like to say they're a good thing, because that venue is saying, hey, we've worked with these people. We know them. We like them. We trust them, and we want you to use them. We're going to make you use them, because they don't want a new vendor that they don't know. New vendors are not necessarily bad. All those people were new at one point, but that's what a required vendor list is saying. The only downfall with that is that you're locked into those. If those vendors are above your budget, you're stuck with those vendors. If you just happen to not like those vendors, you're stuck with those vendors. So make sure to look to see if they have this required vendor list. And if they do, take a look at those vendors before you book this venue. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. My wedding had a required vendor list, and it was great. I found a planner I loved. I found a photographer I loved, florist I loved. It was great. But I took a look at those vendors first to make sure, okay, yes, these people seem like my kind of people. I had conversations with them to make sure that everything was going to align. I looked at their packages and their pricing to make sure that everything fit together before I committed myself to that venue. Also, within that same group is catering. Does the venue have in-house or out-of-house catering? Are you required to do the in-house catering? what's on the menu and what are the prices looking like. You need to look at these things before you commit to this venue. And one last thing that I want to remind you to ask before you book your venue is, what is the weather backup plan? If you are doing any sort of outdoor ceremony or cocktail hour, or maybe even reception, what is the weather backup? When do you have to commit to plan B? What does it look like? And now, a mistake that I personally made was at my wedding I picked this venue that was absolutely beautiful, had this outdoor space that was beautiful. And at the time I was like, yeah, if I have to get married, like if it's raining, we'll go inside. And as the day was approaching, I started thinking about, if it's actually raining and we have to go inside, I would be really upset. And I started noticing that I would probably have a really hard time with it, because I did not love the inside space for my ceremony. The inside space at my venue was kind of bland, which was fine, because for the reception, I got to dress it up the way I wanted. But the way that I dressed up the space for the reception was not what I pictured for my ceremony. And they would not have had time to set everything up in between the ceremony and the reception, which means that if it was raining and I had to go inside for my ceremony, it would be set up the same way as it was for the reception. Of course, the point of the day is that you're marrying this person that you love. But the reality is, a lot of people, including myself, a lot of other brides, maybe some grooms, want their wedding to be a certain way and will be upset if it doesn't go that way. So make sure you find out what the weather backup plan is and that you like the weather backup plan. Thankfully for our wedding, it did not rain, but I did end up renting a tent, a clear tent that would go on the outdoor space, so that even if it rained, I would be able to utilize this tent. So with that said, I hope that you are soaking up these moments of being newly engaged, have an engagement party, or just celebrate with your fiance, your friends, your family. And I hope that these tips were so helpful for you. Again, if you want more detail, check out the Your Day program. It goes through all of these details, or reach out to me. I'm happy to help. And with that, happy wedding planning, and I'll see you guys in the next video.